says nearly 1,200 families separated at the U.S.-Mexico border have now been reunited. But there are hundreds more to go, and Thursday is the court-ordered deadline to reunite those kids separated from their families. Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass of L.A. has introduced legislation called the Keep Families Together Act. This weekend, she went to the border to see for herself what's happening. She joins us now from Capitol Hill. Good morning, Congresswoman.
Good morning, good morning. Sorry it's so hot out there.
Yes, I know. That's the one day where it's better to be in the swamp of D.C. Let's talk for a moment about your trip, though, to another place where it's hot, along the border. What was the most surprising thing you found?
Well, the thing that shocked me the most was talking to parents and finding out that the parents were lied to, that they were told that while they were in court, their children would be taken care of. When they came back from court, their children were gone, and they didn't see them for months. And finding out that the children were told that their parents had abandoned them and they would never see their children again. So I saw several families that had been reunited, and that's the story that they told me.
And I know you saw one family from Honduras specifically. You posted a picture of them on Twitter as sort of a representative of what you're seeing. Tell us their story.
Yes, that was exactly their story. They were the ones that had been separated, but I heard this numerous times. And I also talked to people who knew of their friends and family members who had been deported without their children. Some parents said that they were told that they would have to pay up to $1,500 to get their children back for transportation costs, the child and a chaperone. Other parents were given the names of children that were not their own. And so my biggest fear is that for those children that have not been reunited with their parents, I'm not sure they're ever going to. And that was the point of my legislation, because as of today, the federal government is not responsible for the reunification. It's the parent that is responsible for finding their child. Now, with children distributed all over the country, how on earth is that going to happen?
So what specifically does your legislation do, and are there any Republicans that are going to back it? And if there aren't Republicans that are going to back it, it's never going to pass.
Well, so here's the thing. Sadly enough, I think this situation is going to go on for quite a while. And I am very hopeful, because everybody's going to turn out and vote in November, that we will have a different Congress in January. So I intend to continue to pursue my legislation. Specifically, what the legislation says is, number one, the federal government is responsible. And what that means is that the federal government has to find your child and has to pay for the reunification. It also says that parental rights cannot be terminated. It says that there needs to be a tracking process, because none of this is in place. Now, you know, when you go in the hospital and when you have a child, you get an armband, your child has an armband, and that is so that the children are not mistaken. They were not doing anything like that. They did not have a system in place when they started taking these children. The other thing that I found out, Alec, that really shocked me is that they actually are still separating families. And so I met a grandmother who just cried inconsolably, and she was crying because her grandchild was taken away from her, and they said, well, you're not a mother, you're not a father, you're a grandmother, you don't qualify, so we are taking your child away.
Because the grandmother would not qualify under what's happening right now, but you did not find evidence of mothers or fathers being separated from their kids, did you?
Yes, I did, and let me just tell you something worse than that. I've heard examples, now this is from the Border Patrol, where they are not going to automatically reunite all the parents. So I'm sorry, it was from ICE, because they are doing background checks, and if they find out that you have a conviction, they might not return the child. And I asked the officer, give me an example of a conviction where you would not give a child back to a parent. And he told me, he said, well, we had a parent who had a DUI. Could you imagine not getting your child back because you have a DUI? I told the agent, I said, you know, we have people in prison, 75% of them are parents, so when they get out of prison, that means they should never have a right to see their child again. It's completely inappropriate what's going on right now.
But speaking of responsibility, a lot of supporters of the president will say the ultimate responsibility is these parents who are bringing their kids here illegally and putting them in harm's way. Don't the parents bear some responsibility?
Well, you know what? When you talk to these families and when you see them, the trauma that they have been through, the reason why they are leaving home, Ironically, it's because they want to save their children, and they don't believe if they stay in that situation that their children will survive. So I don't know how on earth you could fault a parent who is trying to protect their child. Let me also correct something, because many of these parents are not entering the country illegally. They are requesting asylum. That is international law. That is law that we have always observed until the last few months of this administration. When you present yourself at a point of entry and you say, I am claiming asylum, that is not an illegal entry. So what we are doing, in fact, is violating international law.
Right. Although some are not necessarily going to a point of entry, they're claiming asylum in other places, which what makes
Yes,
it more complicated.
Yes, and let me just say that they're doing that because the point of entries now are closing, and they are making it more difficult so that they can't go to a point of entry.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Congresswoman Karen Bass,
All
thanks
right.
for sharing your views. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And we will be